In the past, when the British were there, you could actually find a lot of British policemen and soldiers that were stationed in Hong Kong. And for many of them, like they had lived there their whole life. This was their home, this was their country. They served there as part of the Hong Kong police. Now, of course, this has all changed, but still many of the police and government officials speak English and Chinese. Hi, this is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Hong Kong, and specifically I'm going to answer the question or tell you 10 reasons why you can live in Hong Kong and only speak English. Now, I have spent many years living and working in Hong Kong as an expat. Hong Kong is definitely one of my favorite major cities in the world. And anyone who's lived or worked in Hong Kong, one of the things that we understand is Hong Kong is a city that just works. When I say it just works, I mean it's a city that has great public transportation. You can easily get around the city, you can find your way, and it's relatively safe. I don't think there's anywhere in Hong Kong that I would not walk day or night. And I don't think we could say a lot of that about other major cities in the world, especially in the United States. But for Hong Kong, that is exactly the way I feel. I feel very safe when I'm there in Hong Kong, even though I do not speak Cantonese. And people in Hong Kong, their main language is Cantonese. So Cantonese is essentially a dialect of Chinese. It is very different than Mandarin Chinese. Just because somebody can speak Mandarin Chinese, which is a major language which is spoken in northern China, it does not mean that they can understand Cantonese. But here are some reasons why you can live in Hong Kong and really only speak English. The first reason is that English is the official language of Hong Kong. It's used widely in the government, in the academic circles, businesses, and almost all aspects of life. Many years ago, I had to go to a court for some reason. I can't remember what it was. But, the court was all in English. And so really in Hong Kong, even the court system is in English. So you can really live in Hong Kong and just speak English. Many people in Hong Kong also speak English because it is the official language. It's taught in the schools. So the people there are learning Chinese and English. They'll have Chinese and English names. All the government offices will have Chinese and English, so it's relatively easy to get around. And one of the reasons why this is because if you call your history, for 100 years, Hong Kong was a British colony. And then Hong Kong was handed back to China in 1997. So that is one reason why English is still very prevalent in Hong Kong. Over 65% of the Chinese in Hong Kong can speak, write, and read English. Now, this is actually really high because that means that there's many people you meet in Hong Kong will be able to speak, write, and read English fluently. The only time I've ever really had a problem, sometimes with taxi drivers or sometimes with names of roads, that the name of a road that you're looking to go to may sound very different in Cantonese does in English. So sometimes the names of the roads, but generally speaking, you can be able to get your way around Hong Kong. Even though the people are fluent in English, their English is very much a British form of English. You don't have an apartment, you have a flat. The back of your car is not a trunk, it's a boot. When you get off and on the subway, they'll say things like, please alight here. So, the spelling will be British versus American spelling. So they do speak very much a British English. There are several languages that are spoken in Hong Kong. The official language of Hong Kong are English and Cantonese Chinese. But in recent years, another language has gained a lot of popularity, and that is Mandarin Chinese. A lot of the Hong Kong people are learning Mandarin Chinese, and there's many reasons for this. One reason simply is that a lot of business is done in China, so they need to be able to speak Mandarin, or which is known as Putonghua in Chinese, so that they can be able to communicate. So even though Cantonese Chinese is only spoken in Hong Kong and southern China, there are still many people in Hong Kong that I have found, especially in the last, let's say, 20 years, that have really learned Mandarin Chinese. Hong Kong was a British colony, and because of that, things can be very British. I happened to be in Hong Kong in 1997 when the handover took place. And I remember very distinctly people said, well, what happened with the handover? And there wasn't really that much, except suddenly the cute little British red mailboxes turned to become purple. The British flag was taken down, and all the Queen of England, all of her pictures were taken out of the public buildings. That was really, the major changes that we saw, that we didn't see this huge change in a lot of other things, even though in recent years, there's been a lot more demonstrations, a lot more strife going on. But when it first was handed over, there was not. Even the police and the government in Hong Kong use English. So, in the past, when the British were there, you could actually find a lot of British policemen and soldiers that were stationed in Hong Kong. And for many of them, like, they had lived there their whole life. This was their home. This was their country. They served there as part of the Hong Kong police. Now, of course, this has all changed, but still many of the police and government officials speak English and Chinese. I have a friend who has worked in the court system as both a prosecutor and now as a defense lawyer, and he speaks both English and Chinese because he needs to be able to conduct his court business in both languages. Banking is conducted in English. It's conducted also in Chinese, but also in English. Many restaurants and shops speak English. And where I find this is maybe a problem, or maybe they don't speak a lot of English, is if you kind of go to some of the smaller villages, some of the places where there aren't many foreigners. Some of those areas, they may not have, menus or other things in English just because they don't have many foreigners that come in. But generally speaking, most of these shops, most of the places that you will go, there will be somebody there who speaks English or speaks some English. Hong Kong also has many, many English-speaking schools. They have English-speaking schools in universities. I studied a master's degree at the Open University of Hong Kong. It was completely in English. It was a Chinese law degree that was 100% in English. Our course of the reading, the text, and the lectures were all conducted in English. So everyone who took the course, whether you were from China or Hong Kong or wherever you were from, you had to be able to speak English to be able to take it. So, there is a very high level of English among the population there, and that most of them are able to speak English and speak it quite well. Hong Kong people expect foreigners to speak English, and this is kind of different than, maybe some other parts of the world where they just don't have the language ability. But when you're in Hong Kong, most of the Hong Kong people I've met expect you to conduct your business in English. They expect foreigners to speak English to them, so they'll speak English to you. They'll, if you're living, working, or traveling to Hong Kong and only speak English, it would not be unusual for everyone to speak English to you, even if you happen to speak really good Cantonese. Many expats that I know have lived in Hong Kong for decades and speak only English. I know many of them who have lived there for a long time, a large part of their life, and maybe, they pick up a few words here and there, kind of like I did too when I lived there. I, would pick up words in the office, you'd pick up words, on the street, but you really don't speak fluent at all. And so really, you can live there for decades and really not have to speak Cantonese fluently or Mandarin fluently, but you can really live there and just speak English. So when you ask yourself if you can live in Hong Kong and only speak English, the answer is definitely yes, that Hong Kong is really a magnificent city. It is probably, one of my, like I've said before, one of my favorite cities. If you haven't a chance to go there, even to explore for travel, it's a great place to go. I know it's been getting some bad rap lately, especially with some of the demonstrations, but I was recently there, and I could tell you when I was there about a month or so ago, and I was walking the streets and I kept saying, well, this feels like it did before. This doesn't feel any different. And really, a lot of what the news is saying or other press says, it really did feel very much the same to me. Hong Kong is just truly a magnificent place to go and to visit. This is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We truly do appreciate your time. And thank you so much for being part of our community. We'd love to have you subscribe, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, let us know. We would love to hear from you, our community. Thank you so much. We'd like to thank our team, especially Rico, helps make this possible.